the live stream?
It was
It
good.
was good.
It was
Okay,
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so sweet. I didn't know I was going to get to give her her hood, but since I graduated from there, I got to do it. It was so fun. Really nice. It was very sweet. I was there. So my sister graduated at the same service where Stacy got her 25-year. Yeah.
Whatever that is.
It was, yeah. Cantor Sager was there.
Where
I
was this
there.
now?
Rabbi Nosenchuk was there. Vlad was there. It was like the half the clergy team was there.
Where was this? What
At
was it?
HUC in New York
Oh, when was this?
on Monday of last week.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It was really fun.
And what was it for you?
I gave her her master's hood.
Oh, did
So
you?
I got to
Oh,
participate.
that's so
It was
nice.
very sweet. And David Saperstein was the speaker,
Okay.
which is always
Yeah, no, he's great.
something special. Yeah. Yeah. And now we're back.
So Stacy said she gets this document, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's an empty piece of paper.
They were all blank. Yeah. Everybody got a blank
Do
like
they
fake
send you a
diploma.
real one?
I assume they're gonna mail her one, I hope. Everybody got a blank one. And you know what? It wasn't even nice fake paper. It was just regular paper with a ribbon on it.
Well, it looked great.
It looked great. The pictures are good.
No, no,
Oh, yeah. That's all you need. It's for the picture. That's so funny. I think we have more coming. We have really faded. We have a real right side bias also.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
right.
that funny?
That was really is.
Well, welcome. We're so delighted you're here. Thank you. All right, great. Then we'll schmooze for a moment. It's fine. It's not gonna hurt anybody's feelings.
Stacy said, you know, Eliana graduated from Ohio State. That was in December. But now if they didn't walk across stage, everybody got their diploma with their name on it.
Oh, yeah.
So if Ohio State, you know,
Oh, because that's like a machine. That was, I remember the rehearsal for Ohio State graduation. I was like, this is unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was, you had like 13 seconds. You had to go, you had to run across
Was it at the, in the stadium?
in the stadium, yeah. I don't know in December, where do they do it? In the Schottenstein Center?
yeah.
Yeah.
In the where?
The Schottenstein Center where they play basketball.
I don't know where that.
It's like their big.
Oh, the basketball, the,
Now where's your sister?
So she lives here actually. So she did the program. I think she had really intended to graduate from the Los Angeles campus. A lot of her cohort was going to do that, but then they ended up. There was a timing issue, so they ended up switching to New York. But the program is low residency, so she did each summer of the 2 years. She had like a week intensive or a 10-day intensive with the whole cohort together, and then they had all their classes online and capstones. They were supposed to have an Israel component, which got canceled both years. So, but she lives here, which is great. Yeah.
hello.
Really nice. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. Welcome, welcome. We have had there's no boring weather the night that we gather. Every single session has been something.
Yeah.
Well, that's right, the last one was the hailstorm.
We had the hailstorm, and the one before that, I think, was almost snowed out, right? Wasn't that, or two, maybe there's two before?
Well, the weather has been so turbulent,
It
hasn't it?
has been. It has
Still-
turbulence the right word.
Still cold winds from the north.
It's brisk. It's crispy out there. Yeah, it's crispy. We're gonna be dreaming of this weather in a few months, though.
That's
We're gonna be
true.
thinking, oh, remember when it was May and we had our coats on?
Right, exactly.
This is the kind of weather my dog loves because he'll just go stand outside and he loves when it's windy. He'll just like stand and smell the wind. He just stands still and you can like watch him.
It's great.
He is a very energetic Australian cattle dog border collie mix.
That's a mouthful.
He's 6. He's just starting to calm down. Everyone was like, oh, he's just a puppy. When he turns 2, he'll be so calm. No. He gives us a run for our money. He's very busy. He keeps up beautifully. He's never not hurting us around the room. Yeah. He's a good boy.
Never heard of that.
What?
I had lunch with a friend who's in Toronto. Her daughter has she's a little tiny. They found out 21 years old.
Oh my God, what?
Wow.
Never heard that.
Really?
Yeah, really. You know,
How about that?
that?
Well, still puttering around though. Wow. 20, it's an ancient, it's biblical.
Yeah.
Wow.
No,
better than Moses.
147.
Exactly. Methuselah. I just started with a bar mitzvah student today who's going to be studying Parshat Noach. And I have them read the Torah portion and then come with questions. And so one of his questions was, what did the carnivores eat on the ark? Which is a very good question. I said that's very smart, very pragmatic question. And then his other question was, how did people live to be 940 years old? And I was like, okay, your head's in the right place. I answered it the way rabbis answer it. How do you think?
Right. That'll teach him to
He's
ask
so
questions.
sweet. He's so cute. Is he good to you? I hope he's good to you. He's a good boy.
He knows more Hebrew than they can, but he's very quiet.
He's very quiet, but he's asking good questions.
Very cerebral.
He is. And I thought the question about food was a very thoughtful question.
You sure?
What did any of them?
I was thinking the same.
What did I?
He asked me deep questions too, like, when are we done listening?
Well, there's different theories that maybe they had like jerky style food that had been dried and preserved and then brought on the ship, or that maybe actually there was divine intervention and the carnivores became vegetarian because in theory everyone was supposed to be vegetarian before the flood. There's a lot of different theories, none of which he decided was satisfying, which I appreciated because they're not.
Maybe a question is, did the same number of animals leave the ark?
Well, yes, so he said maybe they brought extra mice.
Or maybe they ate one another?
Right, so if you only needed 2 of each
Oh, okay.
to get
Or
off
7.
the ark, right? So in theory, if you took a bunch of extras of the ones that are the food stuff,
True. Good answer.
these are good.
Let's go with that.
Right? He's. They're all eating eggs. Maybe. Why not? We weren't there. We don't know.
No.
Maybe. Anyway, nice to be with you all. Should we get started?
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. So, folks, Rabbi Mobam had a good idea that I
Someone write
like,
it
and
down.
she thought that maybe we should just have a moment or two of silence and remember Rabbi Rosie Chaim, who was not only a rabbi at Tifereth Israel, Legacy Tifereth Israel, for 30 years, 1988 to 2018, but she also served the entire community. And so we're all feeling a loss. It's a loss for our community. So in her honor, let's just pause for a moment of silence and remember really a great person. I'll tell you a very quick story about Rabbi Rosie. So I started at the temple in 1993. She had been here 5 years. And the first service we did together, I sat next to her. Rabbi Kamen of blessed memory conducted the service. And so she was helping me to see what was going on, how the service was unfolding. When it came time, I don't know whether I've ever told you this. When it came time for the Elenu, she gave me the elbow. Time to go over to the ark. Okay. But she was helping me through the service. In 2018, 30 years later, we did our last service together. And we're sitting together. Rabbi came, I can't remember what rabbi is conducting the service, and we're sitting together. Came time for the Elenu, elbow. I wanted to say to her, I've been here a long time now, I think I know. But that was Rabbi Rosie. She was determined. She knew what she wanted to do. So often it was really the right approach. But I got a big kick out of that because, I think if we'd been here another 30 years together, I'd probably gotten the elbow again.
I think so.
But at that 30 years from then, I'd have sat on the other side of the ark.
You would have learned by then.
I would have
You would
learned.
have learned. Well, there's a tradition that we can dedicate our study to somebody that we're remembering, and so tonight we'll dedicate our study to her. So thank you all for holding her in your heart.
Yep, thanks.
Good story, Roger. Okay, we will make a big leap now to the idea of Israel, which was the thing that Rabbi Rosie really loved. So
Absolutely.
that's our transition. So we are looking at section 2, chapter 1 this evening, which will begin on 125. Did everyone have a chance to read it? Or maybe you don't have to tell me if you didn't. It's okay. Yes.
Went fast.
I agree. This chapter went fast. I agree. But we'll still have plenty to say about it. We will. So I think one of the things that's interesting about any book that tries to talk about Israel that isn't actually a book about Israel is the amount of apologizing that goes into the trying to talk about Israel but not dedicating the whole book to Israel. And so part of me really, he did it a few times in the chapter and in footnotes, and that is a piece of this. Everyone knows it's too hard to do well in brief because there's so much to say. And there are so many biases that are going to come out, and there are so many hot things to hold at once. And so I think he gives us he opens with a memoir piece about his own experience of being in Israel and being, can you imagine a 13-year-old just fully alone gallivanting about the country, which I feel like you could do that in Israel. It's probably the only place. But just the idea that, he's not going to be able to capture all of history of Israel or history of Zionism or history of however we want to describe the conflict, and so he doesn't. The book's published in 2024, so it's after 10/7, but before a lot of other stuff that's happened since then. And so I think as we go through it, I'm kind of trying to hold space for where we were as this was being published. A lot has changed in the last couple of years, certainly since October 7th, and he's kind of in the midst of all of that. So I want to highlight just a few things as we get started. There are a few themes that come through that resonated with me or troubled me, and we'll kind of get to unpack some of those. So let's turn to 126 actually to get started. There's an interesting piece here about Hebrew and Hebrew. Was this familiar to everybody, Hebrew and Hebrew? This kind of you're working within translation, kind of like matryoshka, like a Russian stacking doll of learning. So he says in the middle of the page, my parents didn't speak much modern Hebrew, but they sent me and my brothers to a modern Orthodox day school that made Israeli Hebrew language an important part of the curriculum alongside traditional Jewish study. So it's not a yeshiva. This is a different kind of mode of learning. To be a bit more precise, the school didn't formally distinguish the modern Israeli language from the ancient Hebrew of the Bible or the rabbinic Hebrew of the Talmud and its later commentators. Hebrew was just Hebrew. The technical name for this technique of making us translate ancient Hebrew, which we kids didn't speak, into modern Israeli Hebrew, which we also didn't speak, is Ivrit be'Ivrit, literally Hebrew in Hebrew. The description, like the curriculum, had an ideological point. The modern Hebrew language spoken in Israel wasn't a newly invented language, an Esperanto for Israel. It was the same language as the ancient Hebrew of the Jewish past, self-consciously revived and updated for the purposes of modern use. The analogy to Israel itself was so obvious that no one needed to explain it to us. The modern country of Israel was the same land as the ancient land of Israel described in the Bible. So that is one version of what Israel is. There are many people in the world who are taught this or experience this in their own way, that Israel of the modern era is the same land as the ancient land of Israel described in the Bible. However, that's not the only way of looking at Israel, and that is one of many pieces for us to juggle as we think about what Israel is and what the idea of Israel is, which are two different things. So I just think that's an important starting point. That's his experience of Israel. That's not necessarily what we're all going to feel around the table, nor is it what we have all been raised to believe. Flip the page, go to 128. So he's reflecting here on the First Intifada, which obviously is a very difficult passage in Middle Eastern history. And I'm going to read towards the bottom of the page. The moment of the Intifada that shocked me most came in January 1988. I was 17. The New York Times reported that in response to stone throwing by Palestinian teenagers, people my age, the Israel Defense Forces had adopted a policy of having its own soldiers, also roughly my age, intentionally beat the protesters with clubs to the point of breaking their bones. If something was reported in the New York Times, I had no doubt it was true. That was why the story gave me cognitive dissonance. Breaking bones felt like such an obvious and outrageous human rights violation, so crude in its brutality. It was at odds with my received image of the IDF as a disciplined, modern fighting force that strove to reduce civilian casualties and maintain what it called the purity of arms. And then go down the next paragraph in the middle. He says, of course it was partly our age, which was a good one for discovering that not everything you've been taught your whole life is, strictly speaking, true. but it was also the loss of the innocence that characterized our idealized picture of Israel. Or at least it was innocence when seen from our point of view. From a more critical standpoint, whether left or right wing, it was a kind of privileged self-delusion. The self-delusion of imagining that a nation state could be rebuilt after 2,000 years of exile without sometimes breaking the bones of the people who happen to be living there already. That, I think, is a more universal feeling for us as people who wrestle with Israel and are engaged in conversation about Israel and think about Israel and are triggered by news about Israel and have certain feelings about certain terms. The idea that we have this cognitive dissonance and this, I love this, privileged self-delusion. That resonated very deeply with me. And I think one of the pain points for American Jews, maybe especially over the last few years, but perhaps anytime there's a flare-up of violence in the Middle East, is that it becomes very difficult to be a spokesperson for something, that you actually really don't agree with how it's handling a topic or an issue or a group of people. And it is the breaking of that innocence. It's the inability to just look away. It's the requirement to be like, okay, this seems terrible, and yet it's a place that I care about, and how do I hold space for that at the same time? And I know just from being here at Temple that this is something many of our adults are thinking about and wrestling with and trying to talk to their adult children about and their children about, that there are just, it's a very difficult thing when that innocence is punctured and when the privilege of self-delusion no longer applies. Does anybody want to add anything there before? Yeah. Linda.
So, I've been wrestling with this whole idea since this happened, in October, and of course, Israel is always portrayed so negatively in the press, but have a hard time reconciling what's happening to people that are presumed, yes, many Palestinians hate Israel, they don't want Israel to exist, but going in and killing people in their homes and abusing them, all these horrible things that happened to our people on October 7th. But I wasn't aware that that happened back here, maybe naively. I appreciate you bringing it up because I'm having a difficult time with it.
Well, it's not, by the way, it's not unique to Israel,
No?
right? People around the world
Yes,
do terrible things to each other. You can look at basically any conflict in the history of, modern written records, and we see that there is just extraordinary violence when people are in positions of power. And that's not a distinctly Jewish thing, it's not a distinctly IDF thing, and yet it hits differently when it is the IDF, whether during the Intifada or today. And I think it's like the opposite of the feeling when we're like, oh, that celebrity who we love is Jewish. And we're like, that's great, we love that guy, he's so great. And it's the opposite of that feeling, where it's like, oh.
But it's one of the difference, I think a difference is that in the Jewish mind, for thousands of years, we've wanted to return to Israel.
Right.
So we've established a very rich feeling in our minds about what it is, not reckoning with the contradictions of actual power.
Right.
I mean, how many people who have been away from their homeland have been away that many years and imagined, I mean, Israel wasn't just a place that we left, it was the place we were returning to. According to Maimonides, that would be the Messianic age,
right,
when we came back to Israel. So one could idealize what it would be to return and not reckon with the contradictions of actual power on the ground.
For sure. Nancy.
I thought what was so poignant was the title of this chapter is the idea of Israel.
Right.
And to use the idealism of that idea that we in the diaspora have, those that went back to Israel have, and
Yeah.
how disappointed, from my perspective, how ashamed we are that this idea of Israel, an idea, it really was the idea, that we have, that we were taught, our ethics have been
And it has to be grieved. It has to be
And
reckoned
it
with.
has to be mourned,
It has to be acknowledged.
yes.
And I think we're not practiced at acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think and I don't mean just the Jews. I think, like, as human beings, we don't always do a good job of acknowledging when the idea is lost or when it's morphed so radically from what we first set out for. And it's a very difficult thing to grapple with. And by the way, I think a lot of people would agree that the idea of Israel has not been lost.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The idea of Israel, we still try to romanticize it, but the reality that we hear and read and see is so far from an idea of what we think it means to be Jewish, that it's painful. And then you said, well, how are we ever going to go back to that? And as you know, it's very hard to go back when the genie is out of the bottle. I mean, just look at this country. Okay, so that's why, as angry as I may be, the more prevailing feeling I have is I'm ashamed. And that's really hard.
It's hard to act from a place of shame. It's hard to feel empowered from a place of
It's
shame.
hard to any of those
Yeah.
extreme emotions.
Yeah.
And you read this chapter, and there's nothing in it that makes you happy.
No. That's true.
But all the explanations that are coming is how can we reconcile what we learn
Right.
or we absorb as part of our history? How do we reconcile that with Gavir and any of, I don't understand that we all read the same books.
Right.
And heard the same sermons and.
Well, we didn't. So actually, Nancy, that's kind of the point. We didn't read the same books and we didn't hear the same sermons. And there are not, despite I think our best efforts, there are not universal Jewish values. And so for a lot of folks, calling something a Jewish democratic state, they expect to see their Jewish values reflected there. And I think at different moments of Israeli history, they have seen their Jewish values reflected there.
Zionism in the past was defined as, well, then Judaism is over.
Well, right, so we're going to talk about that. I will say, one of the things that this chapter brought back for me, and then I'm going to get to you just one second. I think that I remember sitting in Jerusalem, my first year of rabbinical school, and we were in our Israel seminar class, which was the class where we were learning about Israel. And they were showing us the propaganda posters from the first Aliyah, where they were trying to get people to move to Israel or to Palestine and to start working the land. And the whole marketing campaign basically was they called it the new Jew. So rather than the weak-looking man in the shtetl schlepping around all of the Talmud volumes, were these tall, tan, muscular guys working the farm because they were making the desert green again. And when you think about that, and then you think about like how power dynamics shift and change over the course of generations, it's an easy line to draw to extreme use of power and force. It's another iteration. It wasn't inevitable, but it's another iteration of the new Jew. Like, what does it mean to be in a sovereign land that we are in charge of? We have taken back our ancestral homeland, and so we get to use as much brute force as we need to protect it.
And Jabotinsky said that the key institution of Israel is its army.
Right.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, please.
It's the Israel Defense Force, it's not the Jewish Defense Force, so, why do we, as Jews, why do we feel guilty when it's Israel? I mean, Israel is the people, but this is talking about the state of Israel. And
It's a very hard line to draw. I know, I understand.
It's kind of like the defense force is kind of like misusing the name in a way of Israel.
So they don't think that though, right? Like this is all, we get to sit in our ivory tower at Mishkan Or in Cleveland. We're not in Israel. It's not our call to defend the borders of the land. That's not our call. This is a very difficult tension for us, for some of us, yeah.
I have a, sort of more nuanced view of it, or less left view, although I've never voted for a Republican president. 20th century, there were hundreds of millions of people. You have all of these partitions, India, into India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Burma, and the Arab states, the former Yugoslavia, Sudan, Ethiopia. In all of those cases, you had massive migrations, hundreds of millions of people across borders to be with their own kind. And only in the case of Israel is this still being relitigated. And you have people who are third generation. I mean, how do you have a third generation refugee? I mean, it's a city, it's not a refugee camp. And I agree that, I mean, I don't like Netanyahu. I think that Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are horrible, and a lot of the settlers are doing horrible things. But I think that the Israeli army actually is one of the most professional armies in the world. They routinely gave people notice that they were going to bomb and to get out, which is unusual. And, you know, if you think about it from the Israeli standpoint, forget the settler violence, which is vile, and forget some of the stuff that people are doing, which is vile. But, you know, it was specifically talked about at the time that the strategy of Hamas was they had all these tunnels and all these hiding places, and they knew the geography, and they wanted to lure the Israeli army in, and then they would have the upper hand and they would shoot them. The Israelis said, we don't want to have all of our people killed, so what we're going to do is we're going to totally flatten everything, because then that takes away that advantage. So if Israel didn't do that, you would have many more Israelis killed. So was that an unjustifiable decision made by the IDF to do that? And how many of the, you know, I've seen a lot of Jewish kids, my kids' age, you know, talking about the occupation and everything, you know, if Israel formed, as in they should use different tactics, if Israel formed a different military unit to go in and do it the other way, would they go over there and volunteer? I mean, I think, just, I'll be quiet.
Well, look, I think you're raising a lot of interesting points. I want to be careful that we don't just like go through the like operations of recent years too specifically, though I think obviously it's a piece of what's in the room. I think the idea that, to me, it's beyond like what is Israel justified in doing or what's the IDF justified in doing. For our purposes, I'm also thinking a lot about what does it mean for American Jews who have to, because of the way that our cultural norms are working in America, who have to be the spokespeople for what's happening in a place where they don't have citizenship and are not voters and maybe aren't even really that invested sometimes in what's happening, but feel like they are kind of, so I have taken on a few new conversion candidates, and comes up in all of the conversations to the point where I've started calling it spokesperson syndrome, where people are coming out to their loved ones and saying, hey, I'm converting to Judaism. And they say, why? And sometimes the why is, isn't there a lot of anti-Semitism? I'm worried for you. And sometimes it's, what about the genocide? And then my conversion candidates come to me and they say, Rabbi, why do all of my loved ones think that what's happening is a genocide? And they feel ill-prepared and ill-equipped to respond in any sort of way to any of the questions because they're not even Jewish yet. They've only just begun this journey. And so what's happening is these folks who are existing in their own social circles are feeling an enormous amount of pressure to become spokespeople for a thing that they really genuinely have not had a lot of exposure to, have not done a lot of deep thinking about, cannot possibly have a nuanced perspective of, do not feel ingrained in the history. This does not hit them the way that it hits other people because, again, they are very new at the process of joining the community. Yeah.
I think it's analogous, at least I'll speak for myself, probably many of you. We're gonna be going out of the country soon, just on a trip, and I have no problem discussing with anybody in another country what I think about this country and what we're doing that's wrong. And I'm still an American, and I like the idea of what America's supposed to be, but what we're doing, I think is wrong. And also just want to bring
Yeah.
up one point, and we
Yeah.
don't have to dwell on this.
That's okay.
Because it was something that really upset me. How many people read the Nicholas Kristof article from 2 days ago?
Who's our,
Nicholas Kristof on the Times.
There's a controversy over his accuracy,
Correct.
whether
Was it in the op-ed
I didn't see
of
it.
the Times? I missed
He's
it.
usually pretty, I mean, he sort of like goes into all the
Sounds a little
approaches.
defensive.
And, you know, we don't really know the truth or what, and I know of people who have been posting online about, you know, I stopped my subscription to the New York Times, it's about supplies, and they're always down on Israel, and they're like refuting what's in there.
What did
We
he
don't
say?
really know. It's a lot of horrible crimes that are done in the prisons to
It's too,
Arabs,
too
Palestinians who are in prison.
you should,
Yes, pretty gory stuff. Anyway.
Yeah,
if you have
yeah.
any-
No, I'll read it though. I will read it.
I think of him as somebody who's very reputable, but we don't really know.
No.
Look, I think those things would be hard to read about any place. It feels particularly tender when it's Israel, right? Like it is. This is the thing. This is where the idea of Israel as the overlying frame is really important, because it's actually like there are truths that are happening, and depending on who you ask, you know, think about how we talk about Yom HaAtzmaut, Israeli Independence Day. So there are all these people around the world calling it Yom HaAtzmaut, and then there's all these people around the world calling it the Nakba, the catastrophe. That's all true. That's true. Those are true names for an event that happened. So that's hard. It's hard when terrible things are happening to other human beings. And of course, it pulls at our heartstrings. And we are extra emotionally invested because of the idea of Israel. It's more than just a place. It's more than just a country. It is an idea. It's a narrative. It's a history. It's a generation that we, tie ourselves to over and over again. Yeah. Well,
You know, though, to me, there's a distinction here between the realities of general realpolitik, where a country facing issues on the ground, I think there'd be much more tolerance of that were there not this kind of neo-messianism that is a part of the Netanyahu. So the West Bank now is claimed by Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, both for religious reasons and also just for geopolitical reasons, that they want to do anything possible to prevent the advent of a process leading to a Palestinian state. So that, to me, the Palestinians are the Zionists of the 21st century. Their aspirations are structurally the same as the Zionists in the 19th and 20th century. And for Israel to deliberately and with all means possible preventing the Palestinian Zionists, so to speak, strikes me as creating a mood that makes us all the more critical of what's going on. Were Netanyahu tomorrow, or were there to be a new government that would say, yes, we're willing to now embark on a 10-year process that, if all things go well, will acknowledge the legitimacy of a Palestinian state. You can say the process is underway without saying when the reality, the culmination of that process. It seems to me, were there a government that is willing to say that, some of the critique of Israel would be muted, because what you would have left is what any nation state is confronting in its interactions, both internally and externally. But it strikes me that what is happening now is excessive and an aberration. It really, in a certain way, because of the paradox of we were Zionists, we are Zionists, but we're not permitting the Zionism of the Palestinians, just, I think, makes some of what is happening bankrupt from the Israeli point of view, not just from the world point of view.
So what about the apartheid accusation? Is that true then? Is that kind of?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by apartheid. I mean, if they're taking over, look, I mean, the Palestinians in the West Bank do have some autonomy. They are overseeing some of their political and police matters, but the Israelis are not giving them hope that one day, given stages of a process, that you can aspire to a state of your own. And that's.
So I think we all feel some connection to that, if not responsibility. I don't give a lot of money to Israel, but my parents and grandparents certainly did.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's part of my inheritance, so it's very difficult wrapping them all up when, you know, you're confronted in an everyday conversation at the supermarket or, you know, your gas station or whatever. Where does all this leave us? That we know that this is the government in power, we don't agree with what they're doing, and they're not creating a path to peace, because maybe war is to the advantage of the power in this situation.
Absolutely.
They want to stay in power, and this is the way to do it. You know,
And that makes it all the more suspicious. I mean, is it a self-serving
and it
process?
just seems to repeat what others have said, you're completely contradictory to what we hear from all of you. And we've heard for years, you know, going back to my education
Yeah.
when I was a little kid. I mean,
You
this
know,
is not Tikkun Olam.
It's
okay?
not Tikkun Olam. They're not Tikkun Olamniks. First of all, we read that chapter. That's not them. I don't want to make light of this, but I was recently at the CCAR convention with a bunch of other rabbis, and we were in a side conversation about Israel, and somebody said, "If only Netanyahu knew how hard we were working to stand up for Israel and to keep our people interested and invested in the modern state of Israel. Like, if only he knew how hard it is for us as the Reform Rabbinate to help people feel like some people are, I should say, I don't want to make any generalizations. Many of our Reform movement folks are deeply invested in and still very connected to efforts in and around the modern state of Israel, including with its current government. So I don't want to make any generalizations, but I think, as is the case for many Americans about America, there's a sense of like, I feel disenfranchised. I feel like there's very little I can do. I am choosing to disengage. Yeah. I think many of us in America are disengaging from all sorts of things that in theory we care deeply about and just feel like we can't affect change, and it's kind of, the energy's been beaten out of us. Not everyone, but some people. And I think what that rabbi said to me really resonated, which is like, I can say to you, I think there's a difference between Israelis, the modern state of Israel, and the current Israeli government. The same way I think there's a difference between our government and Americans writ large. There's a difference. It's not all one thing. It's not monolithic, the same way the Jewish people are not monolithic. And I think it can be very difficult to remember that. And when you think about like protest movements, you know, we've had the No Kings marches in America. Israel has had some of the across the globe, some of the proportionately largest protest movements in the history of modern statistics. So what does that mean if nothing changes? Well, people are still showing what they believe and showing up, and that to me is hopeful in any democracy, not just in Israel, right? That's a democratic norm. What we have to hold space for when we're thinking about not just this chapter, but kind of Zionism and the history of nation states, is when you are living in a world where authoritarianism is rising, all of this becomes even more charged. So it's not just Israel, right? Israel matters a lot to us because we're the people in this room, but it's not just Israel. We are seeing this around the world. And I think one of the things that was so interesting about this chapter was he uses Ireland, South Korea, and India as kind of counterpoints. And I grew up, one of my best friends through middle school and high school is a Catholic. Her family is from Ireland. They're all Irish dancers. It's like amazing. They are like ethnically Irish, deeply Catholic, very beautiful people. And I have never, in all of my years being friends with her, ever heard somebody come up to her and be like, "Hey, what's up with Ireland? What's the deal with the Irish government? Speak for your people." I've never heard anybody confront her about it. Because nobody cares about Ireland. I mean, I'm sure some people do, but it's not like this, right? It's just not the same representation. It's not the same spokesperson thing, where it's like, this is, now of course Ireland's not in the middle of anything big right now, that's also part of it, but like, it's just not the same kind of dynamic. We expect Jews to be the spokespeople for what's happening in the modern state of Israel, which frankly, most of us are not well equipped to do.
But once again, I mean, what's going on in the state of Israel is not different from what has been going on, it is going on around much of the world.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Only when you're in Israel do you hear about it. Why is that?
Well, I think
Does that have something to do with
I don't think it's only when we hear, I think that we in particular, it's like we have a spidey sense for Jewish things, right? Like we are particularly affected by it because it's our people. And I think the whole idea of this paradox of like Zionism would mean there's no diaspora. Like if the project of Zionism is successful, there's no need for a diaspora because we're all living in the land of Israel. That didn't happen. Here we are in a very vibrant diasporic Jewish community, living our best Jewish lives in Cleveland. So that's a bit of a paradox, though, because we live with, he talks about this, it's like there's like an orbit that we're kind of wrapped up in, where like, whether we like it or not, Israel is one of the focal points of Jewish identity. And so it is for us to grapple with and wrestle with and engage in, or choose not to do those things, but it is like a tug on us, even here as we sit in Ohio. That is a special piece of our diaspora because we are back in the land. So there are lots of diasporic communities around the world, but they're not back in their homelands. We could be.
But the other thing is, for 100 years, Israel has been a part of world history.
Yes.
Certainly World War I led to the Mandate,
Right.
and that was England and France and so on, the Holocaust,
Yeah.
the United Nations Declaration. So, you know, Ireland, I don't know
Right.
enough to know about it, but has never been a part of the worldwide event. So it's been on the agenda of the world
Right.
all these periods of time. And actually, if the Zionist project had succeeded, Ben-Gurion's notion that once there's a state of Israel, nobody should be, now that we have our homeland, everybody should migrate there. That would have been a disaster for the land of Israel, which depends upon the diaspora for its survival and support.
Right.
And I think as American Jews, okay, we feel particularly used in that effect because we have supported
Yeah.
the modern state of Israel. I know I've said this before. My mother grew up on Jabotinsky's knee, okay? My great-grandparents were ardent Zionists. They were making Aliyah right before World War II, you know, basically started. So I held a special place for all of this because those roots are my roots, not just from an American lens
Right.
of what Israel is. My mother once said to me a long, long time ago, when she had been here a while, that when she set foot on Israel's soil for the first time, because she wasn't really an American Jew, right?
Right.
She felt like she had come home.
Sure.
Because this idea we're talking about is the idea that it was her history,
Yeah.
yeah? So, and I think we all look, you know, it was fine to love Israel as American Jews and support it as long, with our money and whatever, because there was an idealized the whole time that everything was great, right? You know, the land of milk and honey, the cuisine, the whatever, the power, whatever, even when we had the wars, okay, you know, starting with the Six Day War, we could get behind it, but it was really basically was from afar, I think. It wasn't from a deep-rooted feeling, and I'm not saying the others, you know, anybody else is right about that, how they feel about the state of Israel existing or not existing. But this has just been soul-wrenching, okay, I mean, it isn't even that, you know, it's not about my Judaism. This is not about my Judaism. It's not about my beliefs. This is about a country like this country. I feel it's not so great here either about what's going on here at the same time. Do you think I love the idea of what happened in Iran being the Israel-American war? I felt particularly endangered by that particular trope that our government just does. So it's so intertwined. So when we talk about the idea of Israel, the kernel of the idea, I think we lost that a long time ago, and that's why we're struggling so hard. Because many of us don't have the Kishka history for it. We have changer after the Holocaust.
And when you think about it, what diaspora has kept alive the notion of return for 2,000 years? That's a huge achievement of medieval Judaism. So I think one of the implications of that is that in spite of the fact that we're going through a traumatic period here, that idea is so deeply rooted in the Jewish psyche that I think that Israel, as a magnet for Jewish fidelity, if not for Aliyah, is going to survive this period. But we'd like to get through it as well.
Well, and I think there's always the debate, like, I mean, I remember even as a child hearing this phrase kind of thrown around, which is like, is it a Jewish state or a democratic state or a Jewish democratic state? That continues to be, all pathways continue to be open. Nothing seems inevitable.
And for Herzl, it was not, his aspiration was not a Jewish state, but a state of the Jews.
Right, right. You know, my grandparents fought in the War of Independence, and they moved to America in 1952. And my grandfather died before I was born, and my grandmother died when I was in second grade. And one of my greatest regrets is never having the chance as an adult to ask them why they moved to America. Because what did they go through? I mean, I know some of the stories, but what violence did they partake in? Whose bones did they break?
Did they tell you what parents?
There's some family lore, but there's not, I was 7. I didn't get to ask the questions that I would ask now. I think, violence changes people, and participating in war changes people, and I think it also changes the idea of the thing you're fighting for.
Absolutely.
And so I think, when I think about what it means to be there and what it means to be Israeli, and to, my grandmother identified as a 13th generation Palestinian Jew. Her family came through Syria, and they were deeply rooted in the land. I have a German last name because my grandfather was born in Berlin and left as a 6-month-old to be raised in Haifa. So, Israel is such a piece of my family, and we are American Jews. And that's an interesting identity combination to carry, I think, particularly in this kind of Israel environment. Because I think every piece of this is so complicated, for me at least, but it's complicated because it matters so much to me. Like, I want Israel to be a thriving, safe, Jewish and democratic place because I believe in the ideal. I don't know that it's possible that that's going to happen, and I don't want it at the expense of the other people who live there.
So what's also interesting is the idea of the land, okay? So, a state is an idea, but it's this actual small plot of land, all right, that everybody's been claiming ownership of, and wars have gone on forever, over people, whether, your Palestinian ancestors have been, the Middle East is a complicated place.
And it's the origin of the 3 major monotheistic religions.
They call Jerusalem the belly button of the world,
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
which is a funny
The
thing.
Talmud,
I
right?
look at it
The
as
Amphilos.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, so it is. But in this modern day and age, it is very, very difficult to think of it as land that's ours, that we have a right to this land,
Well,
Well-
an exclusive right.
exclusive right.
There's another piece, though, which is the Jewish identity piece. So when we started this course, we talked about Jewish identity, what it means. The book is to be a Jew today, right? So when we think about how Israel as an idea and or Israel as a modern state of Israel, how that impacts our identity, I think for some around this table, it's a posture of defensiveness. Like, we are defensive against what people assume about Israel and how it pertains to us. Some of us, it's our family roots in the land. And then there's this other piece, which is like, for you in this room, is Israel a primary identity marker or is it a reactive identity marker?
And just to amplify that a little bit, I think that Feldman is arguing that in some way Israel, the tie to Israel is supplanted religious Judaism in the minds. It becomes the religion of American Jewry. Not everybody, of course.
And that's across denominations.
Yeah.
So when we think, we've just done the whole theology section, that can be true, I think, in multiple denominational streams. Yeah.
I want to look at the last paragraph, if we can do that, of the article. So, because I think it's a very strong and really arresting piece. He says here, it's on page 149. Now recall, if you would, my main hypothesis in this part of the book, that the idea of Israel has, and he uses that very phrase again 4 lines down, that the idea of Israel has become central to Jewish life and thought. The idea also finds itself in constant dynamic global conflict. To say that Israel is a central preoccupation for Jews is to say that conflict and conflicting ideas about Israel have become foundational. So that he's making an identity claim here, and that our identity is caught up not only in Israel and what it might mean, but the very conflicts, all the tensions, and that's what we've been talking about tonight, how caught up we are in these dilemmas and tensions as a part of who we think that we are. For Jews today, whether they like it or not, Israel is often at the center. That means conflict over Israel is at the center of Jewish spiritual life and identity. By the way, I think that serves Israel, because the more we talk about this, for better or for worse, the more we're connected, we're involved in what is happening in Israel. What is it that Trump says? Even bad publicity is publicity. And Israel is dependent upon diaspora Jewry.
I'm often struck by the fact that, it's ancient, but it's also a new country. And we say that about ourselves too. We think we're really go to an ancient country and an ancient culture and you realize we're still fumbling here. But imagine that every single generation in Israel now, since its statehood, has been in the military. Imagine this country if we all had that telescope of every generation having served a country and lost a people. Where are we? I mean, it seems to be such an enormous, you feel that. Be in Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut, and, if you're mourning and then you're celebrating.
Right.
And sort of that's Israel.
It's also a major socializing institution in Israel, and an egalitarianizing. Everybody serves.
Everybody serves and everybody has sacrificed.
Sure. And knows others.
Except
At what?
Already.
Well, so, okay, this is another interesting component, which is that while all of this violence is happening and the war is going on now with multiple fronts and in multiple places, there's a whole other tide in the modern government of Israel, which is an pro-ultra-Orthodox tide. So even while all of this is going on, and this is a tension in the reform movement in America, this is a tension because one of the things they're trying to do is eliminate the egalitarian prayer space at the Kotel, which would mean that when we, for instance, let's say Mishkan Or takes a congregational trip, please God willing, may we do this soon, to the Western Wall, that we would not, as Reformed Jews, be able to pray in community at our people's holiest space, which, by the way, the egalitarian section is like a tiny little piece off to the side, far away from the rest of it. It's not like it's a prime location. It's not the men's side. It's like way over here. But they're trying to get rid of it as a way of showing that liberal Judaism has no place in the modern state of Israel. That's not what most Israelis believe, by the way. Most Israelis do not believe that, but the loud voices who are working towards this kind of that's another form of authoritarianism, not orthodoxy, but the use of orthodoxy in the power dynamics of the government is another form of authoritarianism. And it's another place where we, as progressive Jews living in America, are then further unwelcome in what is our ancestral homeland. And so there's this whole other piece of where religiosity plays a role. And I want to say one more thing, which is when we first conceived of this class as an intergenerational discussion, Israel was one of the primary things that I was thinking about, because when you consider where you were in your own life when the modern state of Israel came to be, or where your parents were in their own lives when the modern state of Israel came to be, you have a different relationship with the state of Israel. Either it's a thing that your ancestors were saved from, or could have, regrettably, were not saved from, but could have been saved from violence during the Holocaust, or it's a place that's always existed that can be taken for granted. And there's a lot in between those two things, right? But what's interesting, I think, to connect with what you said about how the Palestinians are almost like this neo-Zionist wave, Gen Z feels very comfortable with that idea. Gen Z, again, they're not monolithic, we know this, but there are loud voices within Gen Z, even in the Jewish community, where they say, look, we fought for statehood and got it. They deserve protections in statehood too. Who are we to say no to that?
Yeah,
Which is it's a good question.
it really is.
It's a very good question. But it's hard to sometimes be in conversation with that when you come from a place of, my people fought for this thing. It's the only reason Jews are safe in the whole world. When there's anti-Semitism on the rise, it's the only safe harbor we have left. It's very hard to relate because it feels like a totally different mindset. And so I think a lot of this is connected to, like, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? And, like, are you a self-anti-Semite if you are an anti-Zionist Jew?
Exactly.
Because that's where a lot of these conversations end up. Some of you are looking puzzled at me, but that is where some of these conversations end up, is like, my adult child or adult grandchild is saying these things to me, and they say they're anti-Zionist. I didn't raise them to be anti-Zionist. How do I relate to this person who's thinking about things so differently than I am? What they're saying sounds anti-Semitic to me, but they are Jewish. That happens. I don't know if you're hearing this. This happens all the time. And it's a very difficult kind of ball to unravel, right? What, Lynn? What are you
I just
thinking?
don't understand, I mean, we use Zionism and Zionist or whatever as a blanket for whatever it is. They have no idea, they say they're anti-Zionist, right? But they don't even know what that is. Because my Zionism, for instance, started, in Europe in the 1920s,
Right.
okay? Or,
Right.
the land that my grandparents bought, outside of Jaffa.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, that was a Zionist idea, coming back to the land. There was a piece to it, and I'm not sure how religious it was. I mean, Jabotinsky was a militant. My great-grandparents give a shit to a guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's on our wall, this kind of thing. So it was a military kind of thing to begin with.
And secular. The second
And
Aliyah was
And
second.
secular.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think.
Well, that's the whole thing. We wouldn't have needed Judaism. If Zionism worked,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have needed Judaism. We just have Zionism.
So, it's the rhetoric that's so confusing, because it
Yes.
doesn't have a basis, and I don't know, is it only an emotional argument at this point?
Well, so that's a really good question, and I think it is absolutely emotional. There's other stuff to it. I think, also, I'm not sure how effective our educational strategies have been over the last 3 generations. I'm not sure how many of our people understand there are different streams of Zionism. And so I think we've kind of clipped the vocabulary for people. They don't have the lexicon they need to be able to accurately express what their viewpoints are. And I'll say one other thing, which is that we have not normalized that it's okay to change your opinion on something. So, like, for instance, I have, throughout the course of my kind of conscious adulthood, I have changed my perspective on Israel multiple times for multiple reasons. I've always been in a relationship with Israel. I've always cared about it, and I have wrestled and struggled with exactly what that means for me and exactly where the boundaries of my Zionism are. And I think we need to do a better job of normalizing that it's okay to understand something differently, to learn something new, and to change your perspective on something. It's hard to introduce that idea around the idea of Zionism because it's such a heart thing, but I think in general we've not normalized that as a people. It's okay to learn more and change your mind about something, and then be able to articulate that and practice talking about in your life, I learned something new, I'm changing my perspective on something. We're not very skillful at that.
Gen Z has a very, they haven't been educated in that kind of intercourse with people and ideas, and, it's this is what I believe, right? And don't tell me anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Conversation, they don't want to learn
Well,
and change their perspective.
Ultimately, many of the Gen Z folks that I've spoken with about this who say they're anti-Zionist are liberal Zionists.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
But they don't have the language of what that means. And so they don't understand that actually what they're saying is not anti-Zionist. It's just not this.
Yeah.
And one of the ways of talking about that is what I might call recency bias. What is right in front of our faces becomes the reality.
Right.
And that opens up the educational imperative.
Well, and this is related. I think one of the reasons that particularly now this is such a difficult topic is because of globalization and social media. We have access to so much more than we really have any business to have access to. And what we, like when I talk to college kids, so I've had multiple college kids this year say, Rabbi, I've got to talk to you. I don't know how to stand up for Israel. Some of them have done gap year programs there. They've spent actual real live time there, and they are hearing these things, sometimes even at Hillel, where they're like flabbergasted, that they're like, what do you mean? How, that doesn't resonate with my lived experience of Israel at all. So they say, what should I do? And part of the challenge is that their friends, who may or may not be Jewish, don't have the nuance or the education about it, and they are repeating, to your recency biasing, they're repeating the last thing that they read, which probably wasn't written by an expert or historian or sociologist or whatever, and it becomes these like talking points that they've seen on social media. And so now our young people are trying to do the impossible, which is to stand up with truth. And that's a very big task.
Yeah, they've been sorely uneducated, and critical thinking is always, should have been.
It's hard.
backbone of their
So, but
education.
this is the perfect recipe for authoritarianism.
Absolutely.
When we don't have the education and the critical thinking,
Critical thinking.
that's it. Yeah, please.
I had, growing up, and even as an adult, until I read Ari Shavit's book, Promised Land,
Uh-huh.
and even going to Israel and your guides, I mean, everybody tells you a story. It's like a marketing campaign. We are so wonderful. Any Arab or Palestinian can come to the hospital, we take good care, and anybody had a chance to live here, and they chose not. It was their decision. They would have welcomed us. So you're just told this whole other story. And then you hear this other thing. So, anyway. just wanted
Well,
to-
and all of those things are those people's truths, right? That's the whole thing. That's when he says that Israel is also a narrative, that's why it's so hard. That's why it's so tender. Stories get to us, right? So when you hear from somebody like, of course, if a Palestinian needed medical care, we would of course take care of them. That's true. That doesn't acknowledge a lot of other truths along the journey, but that is true.
But it's, the younger people don't see that because that's not in their paradigm.
Or
That's
it's not enough for them. Right? So like to your question about apartheid, like that word, I think there are certain words in the kind of Israel realm that have over the last decade or so been particularly triggering for people. One is occupation. It did not become normalized in reform movement circles to use the word occupation until, I don't know, 18 months ago.
Okay.
Maybe. Like, I don't feel like people, that was not a word you could say. I don't know. Has that been your experience?
No, I mean,
Oh, okay.
it's not that I have had a different one.
Okay.
I just haven't had it.
So I think like there are certain things. So one is that I think apartheid is a word that's coming up a lot. And I think depending on who you talk to, there are different people have different rights depending on where they're from, where they currently live, and where they're trying to go. Is that apartheid?
I mean, I think there's a lot of hypocrisy coming from the far left. I consider myself the center left. There have been Jews living in Muslim countries for 1,500 years, however long, it's been, right? There has never been any instance where Jews had equal rights in those countries.
Well, is it hypocrisy or a double standard?
Well,
Maybe we're setting a double standard.
Is it, I mean, basically, what they're saying is, we don't want to be killed or discriminated against, we want to have majority control, which I think leads you to a two-state solution. I don't think you can just push everybody out of the West Bank. That's what I think the resolution has to be. But, you know, the same people who are outraged, and I'm outraged too, by the way, that these black majority districts are being gotten rid of, but that's the same concept. We want to be in an area where we, as African Americans, can be in the majority. And I think the country has just become very polarized.
Sure.
And that I think that in a lot of respects, the extreme left is just as bad as the extreme right. And that we're not, you know, standing up for it. And that a lot of what's going on in our educational institutions, having, you know, 3 kids who have gone through college, is pretty far left stuff.
Well, you know, we talk about the horseshoe symbol and how, like, at this moment, because of polarization, the ends of the horseshoe are actually, like, closer than ever.
But I think there's a difference between the far left and the far right. I think the far left is really trying to bring to reality some of the aspirations of our founding documents. I think the problem has been that they've taken it far enough that it can be used against the left, that you've gotten excessive. I think basically they're much more faithful to the aspirations of our founders than the far right. But the left has, in a way, it's a matter of prudence. It's been imprudent because it exposes them to excess, and therefore, let's try to bring it back. But America's always tried to, you know, Lincoln talked about in the Gettysburg Address, a new birth of freedom. Let's go back to the Declaration of Independence, and I think that's what the far left has attempted to do, imprudently, tragically. That's my view of it.
I want to point out one other passage because it troubled me and I want to point it out. Go to page 142, 142. So this is where he's talking about one land, two peoples.
Yeah.
I want to just read a couple lines here. The top paragraph, a couple lines in, the Israel narrative is the Jewish narrative, plus many other ideas of modernity and post-modernity that never made their way into the old Jewish narrative. And it is sustained by people, supporters and critics, Jews and non-Jews alike, who are transmuting and transforming the ancient narrative of the Jews' uniqueness into the land of Israel. That part's not the problem. The narrative of Israel has a crux in it that cannot be ignored. It derives from a reality that Zionism has struggled with since its inception, the reality that the land to which the Zionists sought return was peopled. That use of passive voice is so egregious to me because it does exactly what he's saying everybody else did. It's an othering, it's a dehumanizing.
Yeah.
So to say that it was peopled is not the same as to say
People live there.
that had been inhabited by human beings for generations. So he's right that is the crux that cannot be ignored, and the way that he is saying it is part of the problem from where I sit. Because when we think about, like, what are the Jewish values we want to see in the idea of Israel, dehumanization is not one of them for me. That's not on my list. I'd rather us humanize. To me, any nation is most successful when they humanize the human beings that live within and around its borders. And so the land to which the Zionists sought return was peopled, was like an alarm bell for me. I thought that passive voice was just really telling. And by the way, I think that's how a lot of people talk about it. You know, even later on down the page, he talks about how a lot of the slogans were a land without a people for a people without a land. It was not a land without a people. There were many people who were living in the land that had a full society and culture and heritage and, one might argue, rights to continue surviving there.
Although they did not have political autonomy.
They did not.
That was a backwater
That's
area
true.
of the Ottoman Empire.
But even that, you think about colonialism and all of the empires that had taken over the land over time, like it's kind of the same problem over and over again. And so you could wonder, is the modern state of Israel another one of those forces?
Yeah, which would be a paradox. The
Wouldn't it?
land that
Wouldn't it,
was
though?
colonized becomes colonizers.
Isn't that something that we hear though?
Didn't it happen after Moses left Egypt and was going to the land of Canaan? There were people living there. And
Yeah.
sent
Yeah,
spies to go
Indeed.
check it out.
sure.
Indeed. Almost like even all these thousands of years later, we still haven't learned.
Yeah.
Right. So I think paradox really is what the idea of Israel is. That is the right word for what all of this is, because it is a paradox. There are double standards. There is a lot of heart-wrenching narrative. There are people who are implicated in all of this, including somehow all of us. It's not a neutral situation. And so our hopes and our aspirations for what we pray the land of Israel might be, or what the state of Israel might be, or what the government of Israel might be, it's easy for us to feel disenfranchised or disempowered because we aren't really able to affect a positive change there. I think one of the things I hope people realize is that our advocacy within America actually does shape what happens in the America and Israel relationship, but also in what ends up happening in Israel. So we're not as disenfranchised as we may think.
What do you think about that? Although for the far right in Israel, the opinions of American Jews is less relevant.
That's true.
Because they have a mission, they have a goal, and the goal is greater Israel. And for 2 reasons, or 3 reasons. One for defense, the other is because, hey, God gave us this land. Even though the boundaries of the land are not uniform in the Bible. The Bible has very different views of what the boundaries are. But really, they feel, don't you think, that it's always imperiled. We have to have as much as possible. This is our ancestral land. And the heck with you liberals.
They wouldn't be there.
I'm sorry?
They wouldn't be there without liberal money and liberal Jews. They couldn't support themselves on their own.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not sure that's true. Do you think it's true? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's very hard, I don't know, I came late and I apologize.
That's okay.
But Rabbi Abihila Silver was my rabbi, and my family clung to his words. He was a strong Zionist. This is what I knew, and we were taught Jewish history beautifully here. So, it was, we embraced it, we took it in, and I can talk to my sisters, the 2 sisters don't live here. We're all, so here's what I'm wrestling with. We're all very still supportive of Israel being left of center. So is it bad? Now is it a negative connotation to be a Zionist outside of Israel, but still want us is there a thought, still want a 2-state solution for the state of Israel? In other words, I want Israel to be a Jewish state, even though when I visited on a big trip that I took with ADL actually years ago, I saw that it wasn't fair. We went somewhere and I said, oh, not all this hunky-dory over here. And I changed my mind. But I want Israel to exist because it scares me for the future of my children and grandchildren. But I'm confused in expressing that.
You're in great company.
Yeah.
I think what you've just said really resonates with me, and I've heard it from many folks in our community over the last couple of years, where there's a real sense of should I have to apologize for wanting to be Zionist? What does it mean? And ultimately, I think what you're describing is basically liberal Zionism, where you want our people to be safe, but also other people to be safe. And that is confusing, I think, because of what's happening now. But I think that's not as marginal a perspective as you may think. I think that's a pretty mainstream take. You're in good company.
And I think, though, if Israel were able to find a way to support a process toward a Palestinian state, they would be much more secure than they are now.
Agreed.
Because the various nations, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are willing to throw their weight around and their money to help make a Palestinian state viable. And if a Palestinian state becomes normalized, Israel becomes safer, more secure in its region. The paradox, though, might be that if peace breaks out in the Middle East, to what degree will American Jews, over a period of time, care less and less about what happens there? The more it's Levantized, Levantinized, the more alien it might come to seem for us. That there's an emergency, that things are in turmoil, captures our imagination and therefore our connection. I'm sorry?
I think the emergency this time is not capturing our imagination,
It's certainly capturing our attention.
attention. I have to say, we were there in the summer of 1993 when it was like peace was so close at hand. And the whole feeling wherever we went was just, and it just,
Look, I think one of the things he acknowledges is that there are these turning points. There are these moments, which, of course, in any nation's history, there are moments when it didn't have to be the way that it is. So, the Arab League could have chosen something differently. The war didn't have to break out exactly how it did. There were these kind of like choice points along the way, the white papers, all these stages in the recent history where, it's too bad.
Yes.
And I think what you said resonates with me. I think if God willing, peace breaks out, I'd love for us, the same way that I'd love to not know the names of cabinet members in America, I'd love to not know cabinet members' names in Israel either.
Yeah.
That sounds great to me. I don't want to know who Ben Gvir is. Yeah. It's none of my business.
That we've talked a lot about, so these young people at 18, they go into the IDF, and they could serve into their 40s, I think, right? So, lucky enough to fast forward 10 or 15 years, and Israel is still there. How many of these people are gonna have PTSD? What's going to happen to the way they look at the world, and what's gonna be going on? So that, to me, is very threatening.
Yes.
Look, I think that the psychological implications of what's happening for everyone involved in any capacity right now are so vast. And, when they were talking about like the early stages of those hostage releases, they were talking a lot about the critical care psychologists and psychiatrists that were going to be part of the support team because it's just too much for a soul to bear alone. I think what's been interesting about Israel is, we think about narrative, we think about storytelling. What's the story that's told in Israel that normalizes going to war at 18 kind of indefinitely? Now, not at every time has that been the case. But that's the case for a lot of their young people now. And you think about like, what are the stories being told across the borders? What are the stories being told in the West Bank? What are the stories being told in the Gaza Strip? We know what some of those stories are. And again, they're also true. And so how do we wrestle with the truth of the kind of traumatic experience that the IDF soldiers and their loved ones are having? And how do you reconcile that with the traumatic experiences that everyone else in the region is also having? It becomes this impossible loop of domino effects where everything is just knocking over every other domino. It's all interconnected. And that is why the humanism piece of it is so important because it's not dominoes, it's human lives. And so the stories that get shared make or break the potential for peace. Like we have to wonder how much damage has already been done in indoctrination's a really strong word, but in the indoctrination of these two groups of people over many generations, and is peace possible even with two states? Will it ever actually feel peaceful? Or how many generations does it take to get there?
But if Saudi Arabia were incentivized to pour a lot of money into the West Bank, ideology often follows economic realities.
That's right.
If you've got enough, you've got food on the table and hopefulness for your children, ideology can be softened and muted as you begin to be hopeful about the future.
Yeah.
And it's around the corner. It's right. It's ready. Saudi Arabia is ready.
It's right there.
But do you think Saudi Arabia might have done it, and that might have happened if Hamas did not view that as a threat to Hamas?
Exactly.
not the Palestinians.
Well, here's the other piece of this, though. Hamas is not the Palestinian people, and Hamas is also not Gaza. We have to, that's not, they're not everybody.
Nobody wants to, I mean, nothing that is promised to, Israel agreed to the Oslo Accords. I think it was the Palestinian side that did not do it. I know that you could argue that. In this ceasefire, Hamas was supposed to disarm. It didn't disarm. Every time there is a settlement in southern Lebanon, 82, now, there's been an agreement that you're not gonna have rockets, Hezbollah, south of the Litani River. They're there now. The Italians were upset because they were at a UN post that Israel was firing on positions next to them. It's like if they're peacekeepers and if the UN resolution said no rockets below the Litani River, what kind of peacekeepers are they? So, I mean, you gotta have, if you have Iran and Hamas, who, they don't want a two-state solution. They want no Jews. And to me, the American left just, and I can't stand Trump, I can't stand Netanyahu and these people, but, at some point, there's not, I don't think, equivalency between Hamas and the government of Israel. As bad as Netanyahu is, he's not as bad as Hamas, he's not as bad as the Ayatollah.
But Hamas really, I think you're absolutely right. The intensity with what Hamas started that on October 7th was a sign that they recognized that Saudi Arabia was ready to go.
Correct.
Clark?
Yeah.
I would like to know if you were Prime Minister of Israel
God forbid.
on October 8th, how you would have pursued a reaction and what you would have done different.
Yeah.
You have to go before October 8th. October 6th, because what happened on October 6th, much of the blame belongs on us, on Netanyahu. I mean, he funded the opposite, he funded others to create the whole political
Right. He thought that.
process. So you can't say, well, what are you gonna do the day after? The problem is, much of what
Right.
Netanyahu is motivated by is not ideology, it's I don't want to go to jail for what I did. And it's keeping power, and I think the whole dynamic is power-centered. It's even among the Haredi, it's power-centered. This is mine, and I want my power. And once you deal with the power dynamic, what was happening in this country, very hard, and unfortunately may not be possible, to bring things back where that kind of power, that kind of grift is not socialized to be acceptable. Right now it is in Israel and here. And I do understand existential threat, and you want to say never again, but maybe we've crossed the line here.
Well, I think there is a line. Some of our lines are in different places. Many of our lines have been crossed. And I think, I think back to those early days before we knew a lot of what was going on. And I think there was such fear and rage at what had happened on October 7th that they could have done anything those first few days. And I think a lot of people would have been totally fine. I think it was the continuous onslaught of violence that eventually for many people crossed the line. How soon and how much information it took to get there, I think varies by person. And I understand that.
I'm sorry, I missed that last.
No, I think that how much violence was acceptable varies by person based on how much information we had at the time.
You mean the reaction to
The reaction to it. I think, I noticed that even within our community, that there were some people who very early on was like, this is too far. And then there were many people who were like, no, a little bit more is fine. And it kind of like, we finally, started crossing people's lines where they felt like, this is not, doesn't seem right to continue doing this. I think what's difficult is there is existential threat There is anti-Semitism. There is violence against Israel, and there's violence against Jews around the world. That's all real.
I wonder how much moral ambivalence any of us would have around the table here if anti-Semitism reached a crescendo in America, where you really have a fear for either your own existence or your children or your grandchildren.
How many more synagogues have to burn before we get to that point?
I'm sorry.
How many more synagogues have to burn before we get to that point? Some of us are already there.
Well, but you're not ready to pack and leave.
Well,
Some people
some people
are.
Okay, well, thank
I'm
God-
helping people with documentation.
well, thank God Israel is still there for us.
Israel's not the place they're going.
No, because that, the right of return has been diminished because of the government in existence. We're gonna go to the same thing we have here, and then you have to ask the question, where can we go?
The most valuable place that some of our congregants are pursuing is Germany.
There you go. Isn't that a paradox?
So you want to talk about where are we safe?
Really? Yeah.
This is not hypothetical for a lot of our people. There are people with ancestral ties that are seeking citizenship in a place where they can get an EU passport and have safety and not fear anti-Semitism and live as full citizens.
So let me ask
This
you
is not
this.
hypothetical.
You seem to be on top of that. The right of return, explain that to either me or the others, where you say it's been diminished.
In my sense, that was always a hope, that if things get too bad here, there's a place where I can go, where I can feel safe as a Jew.
A refuge.
And a refuge, a hope. And that has been taken away from me because what's there is here. So the fact that I may pursue Austrian citizenship is appalling to me, but it would give me a passport out. And that is really, ugh, poor mother. But I mean, it's really awful. But it would give me a passport that I wouldn't be ashamed of. And it may give me a place to go, although we're in the EU, they're not burning synagogues.
No, it's Finland.
Finland?
You going to Finland?
Well,
I'll go to Finland with you.
Well, I think
We'll start one together. It'll be our synagogue.
I think Finland doesn't have anti-Semitism. This is a European phenomenon to some degree.
It's a tradition.
It's a tradition.
It's a tradition.
You're going to get Tevye on me now?
I will. On the one hand.
On the one
But
hand.
on the other hand.
One last
Yeah,
comment.
please.
You mentioned that your perception or your ideas about Israel have changed over the years, because of course you've gotten older over the years, and we all mature at certain rates, and we all are faced with life's realities at different times. We can live in adolescence and idealism for a very long time in America. And then there are going to be some realities that knock you out. And there are some necessary losses before we have to embrace what's happening on the ground. I mean, none of us live in Israel. It's a tough neighborhood. I'm not justifying what's going on over there. I bleed with every innocent child that's been killed. But nonetheless, I don't live there, and I'm saying until we literally take up residence, it's very easy to take a high moral ground, and I get it, because I've been there. But I'm getting very, I don't want to call it realpolitik, but I don't know a better word for that at this juncture.
Well, we're a people, though, that have always had ideals by which we assess the real.
And that's why I love Judaism so much. I mean, it's so beautiful, so aspirational, so idealistic. And yet, listen, go back to biblical history. It wasn't all so beautiful then either.
No, well, that's the human condition, unfortunately.
Right.
So we're sort of back to our first question, where we started.
Yeah.
It was God, community, Israel.
Hmm.
And somehow the middle ground feels like, even though, I still think there's power in the diaspora as well, our connections. unfortunately, that may be my federation, folks. I mean, you don't spend 20 years with the federation, and,
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying,
I'm just, the perspective of the federation was that.
which is,
The Jewish Federation, you know,
Yeah.
is that we are all connected and responsible for, you know, the Federation not only had attention to Israel, but to other diaspora Jewish communities. And supporting that was supporting it all. So there was always, you know, a feeling that whatever we were doing had a more universal perspective. I don't feel that in this city as much, or now. I mean, it's just a matter of the times have changed. But, yeah. So, there's that support.
What do you mean the times have changed? As it's.
As every, I mean,
No, you apply that as a federation, how,
oh, I know, I applied with everything right now. I mean, it's not just,
I thought you were connected.
no.
Do you
no.
think the federation is more attached to Israel now?
I can't speak for that, because I'm not involved the way I was in another city. So, you know, I can't even make that judgment fairly. So, it was a very strong federation, and I think, I don't know, Cleveland.
But I think a lot of people here have pulled back.
Oh, because of Israel? Yeah, because they don't want their money, or they'll say, I don't want my money, I want to. Yes, because there's now.
Israel or to the Orthodox faith?
Well, there you go.
you know, if we go through this book the way we have been doing it, we still have 4 more sessions on Israel.
So to summarize,
Summer school, you gotta go back.
Israel in the Jewish spirit, Israel at the center, Israel without Zionism, and so on. Wow.
It's a doozy. That is a doozy.
Temple should have breakout sessions.
That's what we're doing.
everyone's gonna need therapy all
Everyone does need therapy.
the time, all the time.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, how many missions?
That's what it means to be a Jew today, actually. You want an answer to your question?
Yeah, what does what?
You need a therapist.
Universal therapy, all the time, therapy. That's what it feels like to be a Jew today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to have some kind of outlet for all of these crazy things.
But you know, this kind of discussion is, in a certain sense, therapy. We are expressing our feelings and seeing what the connections are, and there's some consensus here and some difference.
Yeah.
So community is reinforced in a conversation like this.
We should be doing this more. Yeah, you want to facilitate one of these?
Well, so speaking of which, that's a good transition. So we did not pick dates for June and July. And we aren't available any of the Wednesdays in June because of other commitments. So we could pick a different day in June that's not a Wednesday. Or we could have a little hiatus. So,
Will we pick this up again? Yes.
well, so will we pick it up again is a good question. We're picking something up again. I don't know if we've decided if it's this.
We might be done with this.
We've done a lot with this book.
Yeah, and what do you
What do you
feel
think?
about the book? I mean, are you excited to go on with the book?
Just want to finish it.
I'm sorry?
I feel obliged to finish it.
Oh.
But I can do that.
You're one of those, huh? One of the toughest self-imposed obligations is, I gotta finish
I
the
get
book
it.
that
I
I
do get it.
started.
I feel that. Yeah.
Well, but that's on me, not on this group.
I just love this book and I don't
You don't love the book?
respect it in this way.
How many would like to go on with the book? How many wouldn't? Oh, all right. I mean,
Yeah. We'll do something else. We picked dates for the fall. There's stuff. We're doing something.
yeah, we're doing
We're
something.
gonna do something. I just don't think it'll be this. We picked Wednesdays from 7 to 8:30. Same time, same room, probably a different thing.
You just send out the date.
We just put them on the calendar today, the temple calendar. So once they get approved by the operations team, we'll send something out. No. Do you have any requests? Think about it. Let us know. Nothing's set in stone yet.
So are we going to meet in June and July, or should we take a break? Okay. Shall we find another day? A Tuesday? Is a Tuesday a day that works for people if we found one?
Why don't you ask whether people want to take a break?
How many would like to
only-
take a break? Those who want to vote have a view. How many don't want to take a break?
Oh.
Oh,
All right.
Whoa.
I don't know.
Well, how,
Continuing with the book. See,
That's the question.
yeah, that's a question.
That's the question.
You know, there is a third section here. If we feel we've had the conversation on Israel, we could move right to the last section, which
That makes
is
sense to me.
the Jewish people.
That makes sense to me.
What are the Jews, the chosen, the marriage plot, struggling with God? You want to do
All right,
that?
so let's do this. We'll pick a June date. Why don't we read What Are the Jews and the Chosen? Is it too much?
No, let's try it.
Let's try it. Let's
Well, it would
lot.
be 70 pages, 60 pages.
There will be a test afterward.
There would be
A
what?
test after.
Oh, yes, it's oral though, isn't
Right,
it?
exactly. New June date.
So we'll find a Tuesday in June and July and do the last section, and then we'll be thinking about another book to continue with.
Or a list, at least, that I might suggest.
A list of things.
Yeah. Think about what you want us to talk about. You'll let us know.
Ah, right. All right,
All right,
let's,
thanks everybody.
thank you very much.
Good to be with you. I guess we'll see you in June. You want to look at your calendar?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's look at June.
All right, so
Okay.
Tuesdays in June. What is today, the 13th?
Today's the
So
13th. I could do the 23rd.
you can do the 23rd. So could I.
Okay, great. Let's do that. Hey, June 23rd. We'll talk to, we'll send out an official note once we talk to our operations team.
Yeah, very good. And we'll read the first couple of chapters of the third section.
Great. Or finish the book. Yeah, you're gonna do great.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. June 23rd. We'll confirm with an email.
So part 3. Very, very nice section.
Really
Didn't
interesting.
you think so?
Yeah, I did.
Generated a lot of conversation.
It did. Well, there's a lot to say.
That's
There's
right.
a lot to say about this.
So we're
Okay.
doing 3-1 plus 3-2. Very good. I agree with you. This was a better chapter than some
It
of the
was. It
first
was easier to get through also. It was less, I guess that's kind of the nature of it though. It was like his overview, but it was,
Yeah, I found it a little chaotic, the first.
Yeah.
This one had a kind of.
it was less judgmental,
And less judgmental.
which was good. All right.
We did it,
We did. I'll see you on Friday.
and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Good to see you.
as well.